all over the place politically. You know, depending on the day, depending on who he's talking to, he'll give you something that is at a far right field and far left field. And so the other day, what did I say the other day? There was something, he said something about Carrie Lake and voter fraud where I was like, oh, you know, Carrie Lake has been slapped down in like 1 million court cases in Arizona because she kept trying to prove that there was voter fraud and that's why she lost or whatever. And she was laughed out of town in many instances, even by Republican judges, just like with Trump and the 60 court cases, because it's not true. It's not true. And we're going to do a story tomorrow where Carrie Lake is still to this day saying decertify Joe Biden and put Trump in now. Like pretend Trump won in 2020 today, now. Just like really, you know, cuckoo stuff. And Joe made some comment about that where I was like, oh. But every now and then, you know, his normie instinct, that's who he is. He's Joe Rogan. He's like the average Joe, minus the fact that he's a gazillionaire, of course. But like his normie instinct will kick in. And it'll piss.
I just want to add, Kyle, homie, like, you know, respectful disagreements, whatever. But it's kind of crazy to be like, despite the gazillions of dollars in the compound that this homie has in Austin, Texas, where he moved so he could pay less taxes, is like not a politically motivated decision, right? Like he's there with a bunch of deranged, crazy people that want to eat elk liver and fucking throw axes and unfortunately fund the police like a motherfucker, right? And like and then they hate trans people, right? And that is the swamp that he has decided to stew in. And he was able to orchestrate all of that at the snap of his fingers and have a fuckload of yes men follow him because not only is he extremely powerful, probably the biggest kingmaker in media right now for the independent sphere, even though he's, you know, controlled by Spotify, like he really is just like a modern Howard Stern kind of a guy. To be like, oh yeah, he's just a regular Joe Schmo blow. Like, no, he's not. No, he's not. And his politics are massively shaped by his extreme amount of wealth, regardless of whether or not he likes to vocalize that on his podcast or make it seem that way. He literally conveniently moved to Austin, Texas right after his Spotify deal. Like, yeah, of course, that was not like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's obviously that these are like Republican instincts.
Piss off all of the right wingers in his audience and some right wing commentators. So this is a great example of it right here. So you guys remember the story of Bud Light, how they did an ad featuring a trans person, Dylan Mulvaney. They sent her like a can that had a picture of her face on it or whatever. And it was this thing. And the right absolutely lost their damn minds over it and acted like it was, you know, an attack on women and it was egregious. And they boycotted Bud Light and they were super outraged. And I mean, look, the best story I could keep going back to when having conversations about stuff like this is there's a chocolate company that a year or two ago we learned uses literal slave labor. Like the Supreme Court heard a case on it and was like, what are you going to do? If there is slavery, it's like 4 or 5 layers down the chain and removed. I don't know what you want us to do about it, so it is what it is. And you didn't hear any right-wing outcry over that. They didn't boycott the chocolate company. I think it was Nestle. They were just like, nobody said a word about it. Standard operating procedure. Yeah, okay, so we use slave labor. What are you going to do? But then there was some like woke chocolate scandal a year later. I don't know if it was like the M&Ms are not sexy anymore or whatever. And the Daily Wire boycotted a chocolate company and started making their own chocolate. So they don't care about literal slave labor, but they do care if the M&Ms are no longer fuckable. I mean, it's beyond parody, right? So this is an instance where Joe's normie instinct kicked in on the Bud Light thing. And he's like, basically, he's against who's ever making the most noise. And so if it's the right wingers who are loud and aggressive and boycotting and making most noise, he's like, shut up, you're being silly. If it's the left wingers who are boycotting.
I'm going to go ahead and dispute that one more time, too. I'm going to go ahead and dispute that one more time because I think that the anti-trans motherfuckers are making a assload of noise, right? They never shut the fuck up. Clip after clip after clip after clip. It's like the entire show is just all the time, you know? And Joe Rogan kind of forged the way on that, right? I remember in the old days of watching Joe Rogan, I would argue with my sister about, and you know, one of my sister's really good friends was like a fitness trainer, right? Like she like owns her own like gym in Manhattan. And, you know, we would always be like, no, like Joe's not a hateful person. Like, you know, he's just weird about like, you know, trans people and, you know, combat sports. And you know, it's like weigh-ins or whatever. Like, I don't agree with him, but it's like a fringe issue. And then he started talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And now it feels like he has ramped it up. And now he has like an entire, like, you know, Eminem style, like army, like speaking, like regurgitating all of his like fucking, you know, beliefs, right? Whatever the line is in white America. You know what I'm talking about? And so it's like, yeah, dude, you did kind of create this fucking, like, help create this fucking fire and this, you know, prejudice and this tirade against trans people. And the people that you elevate certainly did. And so to be like, he's opposed to whoever's the loudest person in the room, like, that's just not true, dude. Otherwise, like, and because he held up a can with the Dylan Mulvaney, like, that doesn't mean that doesn't make a single difference to me, dude. That doesn't make a single difference to me when what you're done constantly is create framework that sets back trans equality, right? And you've uplifted voices that are just explicitly anti-trans, and anti, and Joe will be like, well, I've never been opposed to any like LGBTQ people. No, but you'll bring people on, you'll let them make their stupid fucking arguments, and you won't challenge them, and then your rabid dogs for an audience will fucking eat it up.
Yep. And I think that's really the most objectionable thing that Kyle says here. Yeah, it's just not true. And you're absolutely right, Zach. The right wing currently is the side that is being the culture warriors. They are the ones perpetuating the culture war. To the extent that the left is really participating in the culture war these days, it's kind of just like in response to the rabid, insane, like straight up often genocidal rhetoric coming from the right wing on these issues. But it's really the right wing that's perpetuating the culture war. It's the right wing that's freaking out about Bud Light and their Dylan Mulvaney cans. It's the right wing that's freaking out about Target because they put up a pride display. It's the right wing freaking out because they cast a black woman to play the Little Mermaid, right? They are the culture warriors. So if Kyle was correct here, if his analysis was like accurate and that Joe Rogan is just kind of always turned off by who's being the loudest and most annoying on the front of the culture war, then Joe Rogan would hate right wingers. He would not associate or respect people like Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and the rotating carousel of right wing clowns that comes through his studio. Like 90% of his guests are just straight up right wingers. People always say like, well, Joe just kind of agrees with who's in front of him, right? If he's talking to Kyle, he'll agree with Kyle, but if he's talking to a right winger, he'll probably agree with a right winger. The problem is that 90% of the guests are right wingers, right? So even if it's true that he'll kind of just agree with whoever is in front of him, 90% of the people that are in front of him are right wingers. And even though, yeah, he was a little bit more reasonable on this Bud Light scandal, and he's not like, fuck Bud Light, we have to boycott them. Yeah, he is a little more reasonable than a lot of your average right wingers right now. But let's not act like Joe Rogan has never fallen into the ridiculous culture war nonsense. He has many times that we've documented on the show over the last year or so. I'm sure you guys remember this. Joe Rogan tells Tulsi Gabbard about a teacher he knows who said her school was forced to install a litter box for a student who identifies as a cat. This is the kind of stuff that Joe Rogan spreads on his show. Now, to his credit, he had to admit that that was wrong. He, came out and was like, yeah, that one was bullshit. But there's an example.
You could be a brain dead fucking like an idiot, a village idiot of epic proportions, and still smell bullshit when he said, yeah, my friend's wife works at a school where they just let the kids shit in litter boxes. Like, they don't do that in America, bro. You were not going to get away with that. I don't care. You could go to Kanye West school and they're not going to let you shit in a box. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Another example would be him regurgitating a lot of the groomer rhetoric from the right wing, basically trying to act like LGBT people are groomers and that we need to be worried about them when the vast majority of groomers are straight men, not gay people or trans people. But nonetheless, here he is, fear mongering about how they're grooming kids.
So we can go ahead and keep playing along with this guy, unless you had something else you wanted to throw up there, Gavin.
That's basically what I had to say. If you want to watch some more, that's fine, but it's up to you.
Oh no, you know me. I'm always down with the brevity. I also already got my monologuing in. And look, I get where Kyle's coming from. Like, he doesn't want to go on there and be like a dick to his friend Joe, and that's fine. You can be friends with whoever the fuck you want to be with. I'm not somebody that's gonna like come out here and please. It's funny. We had that exact same thing happen when we went to Kyle's thing. You know what I mean? So it's just like, obviously, like, you can't like fucking finger wag at how people choose to spend their time when they're whatever, right? But I do think that it maybe clouded his media analysis a little bit. But anyway,